welcome to Let's Just Do This, the place where we bring people to the table to have life-changing discussions that empower you to make a change in your life and your health. And today, I'm happy to be sitting beside Mr. Todd Miller, and I'm Margaret Wallis-Duffy, and together, we're Let's Just Do This.
We are. We'd like to get things done.
We do, and you know, speaking of getting things done, one of the things that we love most on this program is helping to put you into action, helping to give you tools that can improve your well-being of both you and your family. And today, it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is about mental health and relationships. It is such an important discussion, Todd. We, of course, touch on it every time on the show because it really does penetrate every aspect of life. But today, we have a very special guest that's got a lot to share. So let's get started. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce one of our Better Together team members who I'm so excited to have part of us. Her name is Ashley Mariani, and she is a mom, a partner, a clinical social worker, and psychotherapist specializing in both prenatal mental health and relationships. With over 5 years of clinical experience working with clients in a variety of cities across Ontario, Ashley's entrepreneurial heart and her own postpartum journey inspired the creation of her private practice. Once again, we tell stories here, and they often lead to changes. Mind Online, a convenient, accessible, and inclusive service for all new parents, including gender and sexual diverse families. Ashley's holistic approach to wellness allows her to incorporate many therapeutic modalities and lenses into her work with her clients. Ashley,
Hi.
Welcome to Let's Just Do This.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, speaking about your bio, and you've done so much work, and you're a young mom yourself. You've got a wonderful 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. What I love about what you're doing is bridging the gap and really being current with addressing the needs of all families.
All families.
Can you speak to that and tell us why you have created this? Why is this so important to you?
So the idea that this population of new parents is suffering in isolation needs to be talked about more. And also the idea that we shouldn't, at one point we were living as a village and we were helping raise each other's families as a village, and we're not doing that anymore. And we need to talk about it, and we need to help each other, and we need to support each other. And so I decided to create Mind Online out of my own isolating postpartum journey. And then I also realized in researching and interviewing parents that the word parent needed to be a more inclusive label as well. And moms are wonderful humans, and they do so much for their children, but not all of us call our moms, and some dads are single dads, so that's also really important to acknowledge. You know,
it's so important, and thank you for raising that, because the look of our families now has changed.
Totally, yes.
And, I think it's hard enough to feel like you're in isolation when you're in a typical family that everybody understands. Mm-hmm. The challenges for families that maybe not fit that norm and the resources for them are even more challenging to find. And bravo to you.
Thank you.
For bridging that gap and recognizing that all families deserve to get help.
Yes, definitely.
Now, as a clinical social worker, you've got your master's in social work.
Yes.
Can you explain to everybody, first of all, social worker, psychotherapist?
Yeah.
Just let's talk a little bit about that, because I think there's often a disconnect and people don't really understand what's the difference, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. Explain that to us.
So, as a clinical social worker, I do the act of psychotherapy. So a psychotherapist works very one-on-one with families and individuals. Clinical social workers have the ability to work at more of a macro level with homelessness and macro level issues. So I was kind of drawn towards the world of social work just to have a bigger variety to choose from when it came to work. So more of a social activist standpoint. And I do psychotherapy, therefore I am a psychotherapist, but I'm not a registered psychotherapist. I'm a registered clinical social worker. So I just like having options if I ever decide to venture into another direction. Yeah.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that a social worker helps people with more of the tangible results of things that they're struggling with? Like you mentioned homelessness. It maybe isn't the cause of some psychiatric issues that they are experiencing, but it is a real challenge that makes everything worse.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and if you are a macro level social worker, you're definitely helping communities and cities, populations, marginalized, oppressed populations. If as a micro level social worker, you're dealing more with families and individuals, and so the idea of perinatal mental health is kind of a combination of both macro and micro, right? The issue around perinatal mental health is a macro issue, but I'm helping families on a micro level.
So when we're talking about looking at parents, and so mom and dad, or dad and dad, or mom and mom, or whatever that family is it consists of, one of the things that all of us, all families, are being inundated with is this whole thing called social media.
Yes.
And, we will say that we are trying to use social media for good. We're trying to share empowering education and action-oriented options through the reach that social media can give. But as a mother, and watching my children grow up with this new thing called social media, it can also be very, very devastating, and it can be, as you like to say, a liar. Can you speak to that and how that impacts your work in working with families, diverse families, how that impacts the results that you get?
So I have a lot of families come to me that are struggling with this idea of perfectionism. And that the parents that they see on social media are perfect, whether it's the curated photos, the idea that they have it all together, they've made the meal, they clean the house, the kids are playing quietly,
No mistakes.
nothing,
Makeup's on.
no, yep, it's fantastic. Or alternatively, this idea that this is the picture perfect family, where it is a very hetero cisgender family, and the representation might not be there. We're getting better as a society of accepting and moving forward with the idea that social media is a liar at times, and I think people are now more aware that they can choose who goes on their news feed and choose what their brain is essentially flooded with. And so I applaud those pages who keep it real, and the people who are representing, normalize the tantrums, and this is what I looked like when I got out of bed this morning, and it's very refreshing to see.
Yeah, and I always like to share the good stories. Just this morning, and I thought of you when it came on my feed, a wonderful woman that I've known through various circles this morning posted a picture of her beautiful baby. She's 8 years old today. She chose to become a single mother 8 years ago. And, she spoke very candidly about the struggle that she had to face, but how not only her family came around her, and she was grateful for that in this post, but she also talked about how some of the social media support that she's been given has also helped her through some of the darkest times. Yes. So I think we always like to give a bit of balance here and but most importantly, would you agree that the message is that we need to be in control of that?
Completely, yes, definitely.
It's so important. So it was really striking to me when I knew we were going to be talking about this topic today that I happened to see that. I think the universe often knows better than we do.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the things that parents struggle with, especially when they've got a newborn or twins, let's not go there, is the idea that taking time for themselves is somehow wrong. In my mind, I know what I went through with the various births. Taking time for yourself at that time is ultra important, because you're struggling with, just like you said, getting dressed, getting up, eating and sleeping at regular intervals. What do you feel about that? I mean, you've said self-care is very important.
Yes, and Dr. Teskey and I were just talking about this, actually. Self-care is of utmost importance when you have a new baby, because you can't be your best self unless you can't be the best parent version of yourself unless you take care of yourself. And so a lot of the times we hear the oxygen mask analogy, and you must first put on your oxygen mask before you put it on the people around you. And so I also like to refer to the bucket or the cup, and you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you need to be doing things during the day to be able to fill your cup.
Right.
And that's going to look different for everybody. And self-care might be something as simple as doing your taxes or doing the laundry. It doesn't have to be luxurious. It doesn't have to look appropriate for social media. And that's another piece that's really important to talk about too, is that self-care is different for everyone. And so for me, self-care is going to look different from you. And when you're a new parent, sometimes it gets lumped into certain categories of what looks like self-care, but we need to acknowledge that the things that are like a breath of fresh air during the day, those are considered self-care. So whether that's a walk or going to the grocery store by yourself, or
Simple things.
Or sneaking out to go. I remember when my little kids were little, to Shoppers Drug Mart at 11:30, just to get a half an hour of me time.
You didn't
and
need
I didn't
anything.
need anything. I didn't need a thing. I just needed to do something different that
Yes.
gave me a breath of fresh air. So you're
Yes.
so right. And I think we have forgotten the simplicity and the beauty of that simplicity in life that can really make a difference
Yes.
to our health, which is so, so important. We're going to have to take a break here in a second, but one of the things that I wanted to give you a shout out for that I've been enjoying, so you got to check this out. Ashley does something called a tub talk.
Oh, yes. Yes.
A tub talk.
Yeah.
Quickly, because we only have a second here.
Yep.
What's a tub talk?
It's essentially me just filming a video in my bathtub because it was the only place that I could get a couple minutes to myself. And my partner usually takes over that territory, so I took it back and I owned it. So his 3-hour bathroom break wasn't going to cut it anymore.
Was the door locked?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Yeah. So I'm taking back the bathroom and I'm videotaping myself talking about real topics.
It's not just for men anymore, the bathroom.
Yeah.
It
No.
isn't. But I do love the tub talk because you do get real, you get raw, you're vulnerable,
Yep.
but you also create solutions. And that's where social media can be of help.
Yes.
Stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, but we will be back here at Let's Just Do This.
Welcome back to Let's Just Do This. I'm Todd Miller, along with Margaret Wallis-Duffy and Ashley Mariani. So let's get into some tips, some real nitty-gritty. Let's give people some help.
Yeah.
How important is it after they leave the hospital and they're settling back in their routine to put a framework around time, to develop a plan? Because when we go back, we're probably going to settle into our old routines, but hey, there's a new person or persons that are demanding our attention and taking us away from what we thought we might do.
Yes. So I always say that it's extremely important, just like we develop birth plans, to develop postpartum plans. And your postpartum plan isn't going to look like your birth plan because your birth is kind of like a one and done situation versus postpartum can last a significant amount of time. So a postpartum plan is going to look like a troubleshooting manual, essentially. Who are the professionals in your life that you can call if A, B, or C happen? So do you have a lactation consultant? Do you have a pelvic floor specialist? Do you have a registered massage therapist? Do you have a therapist? Do you have a sleep consultant? So kind of building your tribe and building your village to better support you during that postpartum period.
So this is, sorry to interrupt, this is more than just your parents or friends coming to
Yes.
let you sleep for 15 minutes. This is serious. This is a list of names and numbers of people to call in the event of so-called emergencies.
And that being said, it's fantastic to also include your go-to family and friends
Right.
people. But sometimes there's this guilt that we hold for calling on, our in-laws or our neighbors for favors if it lasts more than a day or two type
Right.
thing. Yeah.
And what I love about what you're saying, this isn't just for mom.
No.
So this postpartum plan is also for your partner, the
Yes.
dad, or whoever else
Yes.
is in this relationship with
Yes.
you. That's so important, I
Yes.
think. And I think sometimes, because I've seen that in helping to support families in the postpartum phase with a new mom with a gassy baby, for example. I'm
Yes.
internationally certified with infants, so I see a lot of this. And I often will see dad struggling just as much. He's sleep deprived. He's watching his wife go through a very difficult transition, and maybe she's even feeling depressed. The baby's upset. Everybody's trying to figure out this new life.
Yep.
And often they get left behind. How important is it to have those open discussions even as part of your birth plan and then into your postpartum plan?
It's extremely important, and I enjoy working with doulas for that reason, because a doula can attend a birth and can be there postpartum, and doulas can offer support for the non-birth partner. So if the birthing parent has it covered and they're good, and then a doula can step in and kind of support the non-birth partner. But I don't think that we have these conversations enough around the non-birth partner and what type of support that they need, and the prevalence of paternal depression is huge. So it's kind of this guilt that plays with the non-birth partner, especially if they identify as being male. I didn't give birth. I don't have anything to complain about.
You feel so disconnected from
Yeah.
the process most of the time. Speaking from my own experience, and in the 10 years since my last birth, things haven't really changed a lot for the non-birth partner.
Yeah.
We tend to get sort of, suck it up,
Yep.
just carry on. Life's great.
Right.
And
And your instinct is also to be the one there to provide and support. So, you're going to forget about you. And that can show, can it not, cracks in the armor of a relationship down the road if we don't start to look at this partnership and how this new life is affecting all of us.
Or we could tend to hover, the non-birth partner, just hover. You okay?
Yeah.
You too hot? You too cold? You want something to eat? And it's just like, whoa,
Yes.
get away. I need some time.
You just want to make sure you're doing something right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. You mentioned a doula, and I think I'm always here on Let's Just Do This, trying to give some of the greatest new information. I'm honored to be a faculty member of the Perinatal Support Worker Program. And the Perinatal Support Worker Program, which has now been accepted into Mohawk College, this is a huge step forward for the things that we're talking about. For having actual professionals, you've all heard of a personal support worker. Well, this is a professional that wants to work with pre- and postnatal families.
Yes.
And I think it's so important to know that that's a resource, and many people don't even know that it exists. And it is new and upcoming, so there's only been, I think one class graduated, another one to come. But that is something that you can be looking at in your communities,
Yes.
because that is an amazing resource as well.
Amazing. Yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit about, one of the big topics that we're seeing a lot of, and I think it's to do a lot with our society that we're living in, the stressful world that we live in, maybe social media's impact, where one of the partners has got mental health issues or depression or anxiety, or have been diagnosed with something. What is your role, and do you have some tips around how do we handle that on top of everything else that we're going through as new parents?
Yeah. So my goal is to treat the family as a system. It's not an issue isolated to one person. So if you are an individual who has given birth and you've been diagnosed, or you think that you could be diagnosed with perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, I really encourage the couple to come in together, because most of the time, being a systemic issue, the interaction between the couple is very important, and they're going to feed off each other. So by having one person come in and try to communicate, this is going on at home and I don't know what their interpretation of things are, it's just easier to have the other half come in and say, let's problem solve together, let's collaborate together, let's do some psychoeducation. You don't know what postpartum depression is? Fantastic, let's sit down and let's do some psychoeducation around postpartum depression. What's the difference between baby blues and postpartum depression? What are some symptoms of OCD? What are some symptoms of anxiety and those kinds of things? And how can you best support your partner?
It's so important, and I just think there's so much fear around weakness and asking for help, because we've got to figure it out. We're a new parent, and we've got to figure this out.
We should be able to do this.
We should be able to do this. And I remember as a young couple with our first child, it was amazing to me that this little 7-pound, 4-ounce, beautiful, perfect bubbling baby boy, had two very intelligent individuals spinning like tops and exhausted. And, you know, my husband will often talk about the new fathers at his work now, because we're past that, right? We have a 23-year-old son, and watching those fathers walk in like zombies,
Yep.
but relating to, but there is that openness. And Todd, maybe you can weigh in on that, with men to actually talk about that. I mean, is that something that you want to talk about?
Not really, no.
Right.
No. There's again, coming from a male perspective, I've embraced some part of it. We are fixers. We are doers. We come with a manual up here that tells us everything in life that we need to know, and then we confront this 7-pound, 4-ounce, bundle of joy who makes us go, I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
And we're afraid to ask for help. We're afraid to say, I don't know.
Right.
Right. And being judged by your partner, that's another thing.
Yeah.
You should know how to handle this, dude.
Or you're doing it wrong. Don't do
doing
it.
it
Don't
wrong.
swaddle like that. Why are you swaddling? So then there's this shame. I'm going to back off because I'm not doing it right. So.
And then you're afraid to attempt anything else. I'm not going to try and feed the baby
Yep.
because I could be holding the wrong end of the bottle or something.
Right. It's so important. And I think having these discussions is really important. And why I love what we do here on the show is to really, pull the covers back and talk candidly about some of these real things that happen and to so many of us, but it's so isolating when we feel like we're on our own doing it. But there needs to be more change, and bravo for you for doing that. So let's talk a little bit about the Mind Online.
Yes.
What is that?
Oh, I know. So Mind Online is my business, and it started out completely online. So online therapy, either by text or by video. 2 options for text, synchronous and asynchronous. So for non-tech savvy people, essentially instant messaging, and then a thread of messages for a week where you can drop in and leave a message, and then you'll get a reply that night. And then the other option being video. And just recently, it's expanded to also in-office sessions located in Elmira and Elora. And so that's just kind of, I love the online because it's accessible to new parents. And, for the parent that's not taking the parental leave and they're at work and they need to take their lunch hour to just process and talk and vent, and go home with new strategies for their partner, then fantastic. You can spend your hour eating your lunch, doing a therapy session, and
Amazing.
it's done.
Love it. Isn't that awesome?
Being able to recharge during lunch and get some tools and strategies to say, I can tackle the rest of my day.
Yeah, and there'll be some people that will say, oh my goodness, you can't do therapy, in a text message. I'm going to argue and maybe go out on a limb and say many of the generation now, perhaps not old guys like us, that weren't raised with text messaging, it might seem a little odd. But to the generations now, this is the way they've been raised. This is often the way they communicate. And I think that you're really capturing an opportunity. And sometimes that fear that you just talked about, or that shame to reach out for help, there's a little bit of an opportunity, maybe I'm wrong, by text, I'm not right in front of someone, it might be...
It's less vulnerable.
It's less vulnerable.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's amazing, too, if a mom is having a moment at 3 o'clock in the morning while she's trying to, nurse her baby or feed her baby, or a dad is trying to feed the baby. That's why the asynchronous messaging is amazing, because they can vent, they can process, they can release it, and then when I wake up in the morning, I can read it and reply.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we only got a couple of minutes left, but I know that there's one thing that you've shared in your Tub Talks that one of our favorite guests on our show, Dr. Carolyn Teskey, had called me one day and said, have you seen these Tub Talks? And do you know about this anxiety box? I'm like, huh? What do you mean? Tell everybody what the anxiety box is and why is it such a useful strategy?
So she came up with the word anxiety box, but essentially, and it's amazing, and that's probably what I'll use from now on, but it's allowing yourself a block of time during your day to experience all the anxiety, all the worry, all the concerns, all the processing that you need to. So then when you're done, you can kind of close it up, put it on the shelf, and get on with your day. But knowing that, okay, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm allowing myself to worry about this, then you can give yourself the space. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to scream, scream. If you need to write down all your worries, then do it. But you can essentially do whatever you need to do with your anxiety and your worries in that time frame. And then when it's done, it's done.
And it can be so freeing.
What are the benefits of that? Like for someone that, Is it just giving yourself permission to say, I'll deal with it later?
Yes. And it's not about pushing it aside. It's about saying, I'm going to allow myself the freedom to feel what I need to feel, but I'm not going to allow it to consume my day.
Okay.
And so being mindful and present, we've talked a lot on this show about mindfulness and the importance of that. And sometimes when we've got that reel in our head, all the various worries, but we still have to go to work and we still have to make dinner and we still have to do, and that reel is constantly going, you're not good at any of it.
No.
And it does have an impact on our physical and our emotional well-being. So I do love the idea of saying, oh no, you know what, I'm actually going to put this in my calendar, and at 3 o'clock or 9 p.m. or whatever the time is, I am going to actually get this off my chest and allow me to put some strategies in place to move forward. That's a very cool way of looking at things. So, time has almost come where we have to finish off the show, but if we always love to ask, we want to hear something just about Ashley that most people may not know, but it's kind of cool. What do you got?
So about 5 years, I just had this conversation with Caitlin. So about 5 years ago, I was in a figure competition in Ottawa. Yep. Placed second in Ottawa. Yep. It was one of those bucket list experiences, and it probably was what got me on the trajectory of wellness, even though that was the epitome of unhealthy. It forced me to pay more attention to my body and what felt good and move forward in a different way in life.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much
Thank
for coming
you.
on and sharing your story and your expertise. If you want more information, the information is up on the screen. Make sure you reach out to Ashley Mariani. She will be also back on the show at some point because she's linking arms with us in the Better Together movement. So if you have any guests that you'd like to see in the show, or perhaps you have a topic that you want to know more about, reach out to Todd and I here at Let's Just Do This. You can follow us on all the social media platforms. You can check us out on SoundCloud and Spotify and iTunes. And of course, you can catch us here every week on your TV. From all of us here in studio to all of you, until we see you next time, be well.